Hello. I wanted to do kind of a video about like defensive teams, right? So, like last week, I actually did a lot of Guild War battles, which I felt were like way easy because they did some because I was fighting targets that I felt like had a inferior defensive team, and I'll show you what those look like, right? So these ones, right, is what you'll notice is I'm not running Sebastian, and that's because this team isn't really making me run Sebastian. There's no like real status effects. I mean, yeah, Nebula can drain your energy, but it's not enough for me to bring in Sebastian, so I brought in Martha. This is like getting a fifth hero. It's like Sebastian's so often like a must-have, and if like a lot of times when you set a defending team, you'll want to set a defending team that forces them to bring Sebastian. You want like something that causes status effects of some sort. Like I said, otherwise I don't have to bring Sebastian. I can bring a fifth hero in, and it's an easy win. So it's like not having, like I said, so having Sebastian is definitely good. The other team also did not have Sebastian. I noticed how they're just stun locked here. That's also, I think, a mistake. I think you should always have Sebastian when possible. Yes, Nebula can kind of somewhat replace Sebastian if you got her really high, but like I said, there's really, like, Sebastian's just much better. I guess one does have Sebastian, but again, nothing I really have to worry about status effect wise. Again, just Nebula. And I have Martha here again to kind of protect against you. And, but yeah, this one's like I said, didn't really make me want to bring Sebastian, so, which made it a lot easier to play around you, because now I can just bring in Martha, in addition to Celeste, and then just roll over him. Like, so he still wants Celeste versus Jew. Like I said, I mean, if they had a different team that had status effects or something, I would probably not use Martha. I'd use Sebastian over Martha, and then just have Axel over Lars, and that usually works, but not always. But right, so and then I had this one. Right, this one I brought in Maya for extra DPS because again, these Iris teams a lot of times Iris doesn't have any status effects, so she can be a tank slayer, but she doesn't have any status effects. So you really gotta build your team with like an Arachne or something to force them to bring in, or Isaac maybe, because you had to force them to bring in Sebastian to really get an advantage, right? Like, and that's the thing, like Sebastian. So that's Ode to Serenity, Bubbles of Justice are kind of like the two abilities that define the metagame. Like most people use Axel as a pet, most people have Sebastian, right? So if I don't have to bring in Sebastian, it's like getting a fifth hero, and it just like I said, just means I can have a much more powerful team. In this case, I brought in Maya. And for extra healing, for extra DPS. And like I said, we get a pretty easy win here. Celeste does die, but it just kind of grinds out, which is something you could do with Maya. And again, it's another team where, like I said, similar to this one, right, the other ones. Again, you see these Irish teams, they aren't making me use Sebastian, which just makes them easy wins. Like, Iris could be a tank slayer, but like, if you aren't to make, except if you're allowing me to bring in a fifth hero to actually get the win easier, like that Sebastian, the only thing he adds to the Twins team is the ability to cast Ode to Serenity, protect you from status effects. Like, you're not making any advantage of his critical hit abilities, but Sebastian's so important, you use him anyway. So when I don't have to use Sebastian, it makes me feel like I'm overpowered even more than usual. So when you're building defending teams, it's important to have a hero that uses status effects that will force Sebastian out, force him to use Sebastian. And then on the flip side, if you don't have Sebastian, right, actually we did the fights already. So if we are, like I said, if you don't have Sebastian though, then it makes it, you always want Sebastian on your defending team. Because if you don't have Sebastian, then it becomes, like I said, this team I used to beat those other teams with Martha, plus Celeste, Aurora Twins. Not a very good defending team because you need Sebastian on your team. Otherwise, because if you don't have Sebastian, it's way too easy to like stun cheese you or silence lock you, etc. Like, see how like they're getting stunned up the front from the drone strike with Arachne. And that's what happens. That way, and Maya can actually bunch them up, which just makes it easier to stun. So now the whole team is stunned minus Aurora because she had a purifying sphere up, but now she's stunned from the drone strike. And this is because there's no Sebastian, I can stun cheese this team for an easy win. It doesn't even make me work hard. right? So that's a downside. Like, so that's why you'd need to have Sebastian on your defending team as well. Generally, you want to have somebody who causes status effects and you want Sebastian to protect you from status effects. So those are kind of like the two things you really need to keep in mind when building defending teams. Like I said, Maya, like I have Albus on Maya. Aurora is still the supreme queen of DPS, but Albus greatly adds to Maya's DPS because increases DPS, but increases pure damage by 75%. Plus, he adds magic attacks, so you almost double Maya's DPS when you have Albus Patron. So if you do, like I said, but if you do have Sebastian on your team, like I said, so rather than having Martha and you have Sebastian instead, right, with Albus Patron on Maya, you're not going to get nearly as good of results, and that's because Sebastian is blocking all these stuns. Like, we're not doing any status effects here. This team's not getting stunned, right? And it's going a lot worse for us here. And that's because they have Sebastian to protect. Like, Lars is dead, but Arachne's not going to get us there. And she dies, like I said. So without being able to land stuns, this ends up being a pretty big defeat. Even, like I said, and you see, like, Maya died pretty quickly. She didn't get to do a lot of damage despite having Albus. So this is important to Sebastian on the defending team. I have to bring in Sebastian because they have Lars and Krista. Watermarks Lars can stun for a long time, especially with Mara Patron. So you always want to bring in Sebastian versus Lars. Like I said, there is a way to beat with Sebastian, but you have to kind of change your patrons. And this time, instead of having Albus Patron, we have Biscuit Patron. Like I said, but this greatly hurts Maya's DPS. It does work against some teams, but there have been times I've literally timed out with Maya without Albus. So you force me to change my pets or use different heroes entirely when you have Sebastian. Like I said, Sebastian, there's no single hero in the game who will contribute more to your overall win rate than Sebastian. This is why, like, when you decide to defend a team, you should have Sebastian. But more than that, you should also try to force the enemy team to bring Sebastian. Because if they don't need to use Sebastian to beat you, it's like giving them an extra hero. Like I said, you want to try to keep fights for 5 versus 4, essentially 5v4 if you can. That's why you want to try to force them to have Sebastian. Like I said, this fight is kind of grindy. Like I said, we are able to strip Ode, but he put another one up. And that's the thing, like, it's kind of a soft counter. It's, like, not a hard counter, but Maya with Biscuit Patron is pretty good. This fight is go dragging out pretty long, though, because Maya's not doing nearly as much DPS as she could normally, because I don't have Albus Patron on her. We just have the Biscuit. But we are winning here. Not the most convincing win, because we did lose Sebastian. But this is a kind of a grind-out win. Like I said, we've used up half our time. Like, it's took us most, like I said, over a minute. Like, it's definitely a grindy win. Even though the fight was way long, Maya only did 700k. Aurora again, top DPS. Like, so that's why you usually want Albus there. But because they have Sebastian, I have to kind of change tack. And that's the point of having Sebastian on a defending team. I'm of the opinion, if you don't have Sebastian on a defending team, you're making a mistake. You should always have him, because it just makes it too easy to stun cheese or use Jorgen or just silence lock you with Thea or Isaac, like I said, so having Sebastian forces the other team to bring a counter, like a way to strip Ode or just to ignore Sebastian. A lot of times it's just a brute force your way through the team and just kind of pretend that, and not try to use status effects. But if they don't have Sebastian, you can lock the other team down with status effects way too easily. And like I said, if you don't have anything that forces the other team to use Sebastian, like, you want to have status effects, so they want to bring in Sebastian to protect against the status effects, because if you're not trying to force them to use Sebastian, you just make it way too easy for them to win. So there's generally 2 key points when trying to set up a good defending team. Anyway, I hope you guys found this video informative. Thank you for watching.